Hello and welcome to video 4 in this video series where we're looking at our skill corner difference makers. Today we're going to be focusing on our game intelligence data in possession and our player possessions data. So what are the difference makers when it comes to player possessions at skill corner? Well, first of all, we capture and detect everything that happens on the pitch from the moment a player receives the ball to the moment they no longer have the ball. That would include things like their distance, the trajectory, the speed of their play possession. Were they able to create separation between themselves and their opponents? We also, of course, know the location as to where all of these player possessions happen on the pitch, whether that be by third, by channel, or of course the actual XY coordinate on the pitch. We also know what type of possession the player has engaged in, and this is what we're going to look at in a little bit more detail as we go through this video today. Was it a carry? Was the player looking to play with one touch and quick tempo? Did they create forward momentum with that possession? And also, what was the duration? How long were they actually on the ball for? Really importantly, with every single individual possession, we also know the context of the game and the opposition structure. So we know the phase of play that every possession happened in. We know that defensive structure. And then when we understand the defensive structure, we can also understand, was our player in possession of the ball inside that structure, inside or outside the block? Really important to be able to differentiate at that level of detail. We also know the opportunities and outcomes. So did the player break a line with his play possession, or did he have the option to break a line in a particular possession? How many players were bypassed, and were they able to move the ball into a more dangerous position with a box entry? If we now put a little bit of context to this and try and create a story to go through in the next few sections, we're going to try and look for a wide attacking player who can be aggressive against our opponents in a mid-block. We want them to be able to carry the ball forward, but they need to be able to do this at high speed. And then ultimately, by doing those two things, they can move us into a more dangerous position on the pitch. So the sample of data we're going to look at today are going to be wide attackers born in 2000 onwards who have played at least 8 matches of 60 minutes or more in Brazil 1, Brazil 2, Argentina 1, Chile 1, and Mexico 1. And first of all, we're going to just look at simple total ball possessions. For every 30 minutes, their team has possession. And we can just get a rank here of which players are actively managing to get themselves on the ball, just as a quick benchmark. But let's start to look in more detail now and start to differentiate between a player profile and a certain type of player that we're looking for. Here on the x-axis, we have 8-meter carries per 30 minutes. And on the y-axis, we have quick passes. So what we're trying to do here is differentiate between the players who like to get the ball and carry compared to those players who like to play quickly, move the ball quickly and keep the tempo in the game. So we have here our orange segment of players. They're more of those tempo quick pass players. Our blue players are very much more the ball carriers. Our green players actually a little bit of both, which is quite interesting. They can do both sort of sides of this. And the red players maybe not quite what we're looking for in this particular scenario. But if we just look at the top 10 players in terms of 8-meter carries, but those 8-meter carries must be above running speed. We start to get a nice rank and a nice understanding of these players who can make these carries at high speed, which is really important for the profile that we're looking for in this scenario. If we go a step further, we can actually look at that as a percentage. So of all of their carries, all of their 8-meter carries, what percentage of them are above running speed? And we can see here that the top 10 players, at least 50% of their carries are above running speed. So we're really starting to find those nuanced players now who not only can make carries at frequency, but they can also make them at speed frequently as well. Of course, we mentioned that we actually want the players to be able to do this in a create phase, not just in the finish when they're hard the pitch. We sort of want them to do this a little bit lower and move us into that finish phase. So when we look at 8-meter carries in a create phase, the list changes again. And we're starting to see players who can make these carries from a create phase 3 to 5 times, if not higher, for the top player here. For every 30 minutes, their team has possession. So these are those real ball carriers from a lower position on the pitch, moving us up the pitch with the carry. But often when we're looking for players, it's not an or, it's an and. So we need them to be able to make carries at high speed and in the create phase. So if we combine those two together, we now get this list of the top 10 players who can make those carries at a running speed and in the create phase. And we're now starting to get a really interesting list and a really specific list of players that are important for our particular player profile. The next step, if we take those same top 10 players and actually look at their ball retention. So yes, we need them to make carries. We'd like them to make carries at high speed and in the create phase. But they also need to be able to retain the ball. It's no use if they're making those carries but also losing the ball. So when we look here, it's interesting to see that actually the sort of the difference and the spread in terms of the retention here really differs quite a bit, from 76% at the top down to 37% at the bottom. Ideally for us, we'd probably be wanting a player to be at least around the 50% level in terms of being able to retain the ball when they make a high-speed carry.
Okay.
So what else can we add and try and differentiate between these top 10 players? Well, we can also look at the separation and their retention in different separation situations. So on the x-axis, we can understand a player is able to retain the ball when they make carries in a high separation scenario. And on the y-axis, we can actually look at when they have a low separation. So that's where their opponent is much tighter, much closer to them. And actually, really interestingly here, you can sort of see there's almost a sort of a negative correlation between players that can keep the ball with a better retention rate in high separation actually seem to have a lower retention rate when they have low separation. So quite an interesting dynamic here. And of course, we could look at this in more detail with every single individual possession captured. One thing that stood out here when we went through this piece of analysis was actually that 3 of those top 10 players are now playing for Boca Juniors in Argentina. So maybe it's something that particular club are looking at. Maybe it's something that they're trying to develop in terms of their playing style of the club. But they have these 3 really young, exciting players who we know can carry the ball from the create phase at high speed and also with a pretty good retention rate as well. So a really exciting team that may be worthwhile having a look at. But if we look back to the start, of course, we've aggregated our data there at various levels, but we could go many steps further. We could look at when players are making these carries. Are they bypassing players? How many players are they bypassing with these carries? We understood that they were traveling 8 meters with these carries, but maybe we could go further. Maybe we want to understand actually, can they make them 15, 20 meters? Can they really drive us into the opposition half? And also, what angle are they making these runs at as well? You know, some players are maybe trying to go wide towards the corner flag, whereas others are probably a little bit more direct towards goal. All of these nuances we're able to understand and discover with the skill corner data. Of course, we also know the outcomes. Did they end in penalty area entries? Did the sequence of play lead to a shot or a goal? And with every single possession, we can plot them. So we might be able to plot them in terms of a data visualization to see where players actually get the ball, in terms of those channels and locations that we spoke about earlier. But we can also see every single one of these moments in video using our XMLs. And finally, in this video, we focused in on those ball carries, but we could also do a very similar approach looking at players who are able to play with tempo. So maybe you want to drill down further on players who can play with one touch or quick passes, if that's more important to us and the player profile that we're looking for. Again, we also have forward momentum, probably more relevant for a central player. Are they able to receive the ball and that possession play forward? So again, really sort of the specific game moments that we can look at to make sure that you're looking for the right player relevant to your player profiling model and your game model. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, for any more information, please feel free to reach out to your local Skill Corner representative, and we're more than happy to speak to you in more detail.